Good evening, everyone. My name is Wilkie, and it is my pleasure and my privilege to be hosting this panel this evening. It's great to have over 200 female players currently viewing this seminar, and I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with Ciara, Lucy, Sene and Claire. They will provide you, the viewers tonight, with a player's perspective on what's required to be world class. So Claire, Sene, Lucy, Ciara, good to see you. Thanks for joining us, and we're going to get underway. So to kick us off, I'm going to ask each of you to reflect on your rugby career to date. We often assume as people in the rugby community that there's one path and one path only to getting that green jersey, but that's far from the case, and everyone's got their own unique journey. With that in mind, I'm going to ask you each just to share your story, with a particular focus on some of the key stepping stones for you along the way to getting there. And Ciara, we might start with you, please.
Yeah. Hi guys, how are you? For me, I was really lucky in that I got to start playing rugby at a young age, where I started at under-14s in Castleisland IRFU in Kerry. It was a lot of pestering on my dad to finally set up a team, and we got there. It was great. We got a lot of, got to play with my friends, my teammates, which was brilliant. And then from there, I went to senior club in Limerick, and then when I was in college, and then I was senior in Tralee RC as well, and then went to UL Bows. So that's my club history, I suppose. But then my stepping stone to Ireland was, look, it wasn't a straight path like many country roads in Kerry. There's a lot of bends in it. So I didn't get there my first shot, and even though I took it tough, I was quite young at the time, and thought obviously in my head I was able for the green jersey. You know, I was able to be back row, and looking back at it, I was very small. Like I wasn't the right size or anything. But hindsight's a great thing. So I didn't get my first trial. I was really disappointed, and I went to my coach, Yak in Tralee, and said, look, what can I do to be a better player? And he gave me all these stepping stones and gave me a gym program, and I worked really hard. Then went to the second trial. I was like, yeah, definitely have it this time, and didn't get it either. And at that point, I was like, okay, it was very easy for me to say, I tried it twice, that's it. But then I was like, you know what, I've always wanted to play in green, and got on to Anthony Eddy for feedback after my trials, got my feedback, literally worked in all my areas, and then thankfully I got so you get the phone call everyone wants, and I got to get into the training squad, and I got to train hard there and put my hand up for selection. So that was kind of my path to the Irish Rugby squad.
No, excellent, Ciara. Thank you for sharing. A lot of richness there, and just goes to prove that point that, you know, it isn't that straight line. And I'm going to come back to you shortly to get you to explain some of those bends in those Kerry roads as well. So we'll pick that one up shortly. Lucy, welcome. If you can give us a bit of a background on your journey, please.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. So I guess I have a very unconventional pathway to rugby, in that I was a very passionate GAA player for all my life, and I had very little exposure to rugby, or to women's rugby in particular. I remember they did an incredible documentary on RTE about the girls winning the Grand Slam, and I remember I was in tears watching it, and got like, you know, you get kind of that tingle in your spine nearly watching it. But that was my only exposure to women's rugby till I was in second year of college, and I got an email from Stan McDowell, who's the development coach within the Sevens program, asking if I'd give it a shot. And even at that point, I didn't know what Sevens was. I started looking it up, and I'd heard of Laura Lee Walsh, women's footballer who had transferred over, and I said, look, I'll give it a shot. I wouldn't turn down an opportunity, and I went in and was very fortunate to get to go with a development squad to Amsterdam. And from there, just had to I fell in love with the game straight away, because I thought it was such an honest, hard-working game, and I love the responsibility of it, where like you're totally accountable for the tackle that you have to make, but you're also so reliant on those around you. So from then on, I just kind of took it that I was going to learn this game and going to try develop as much skill as I could over and over, practicing over and over again. And I've been very fortunate then to be able to represent the Sevens. But as I said, I I'd give an arm and a leg to have started at the age of 14 when Ciara did. I feel like I wish I'd came across the sport earlier, but even just small things like being able to see the women win the Grand Slam was kind of that small little thing that was in my head when I first got that email, and I'm not sure if I would have actually said yes to the email if I didn't have that exposure to it beforehand.
Yeah, amazing story, Lucy. Thanks for sharing. It's just those moments sometimes that make a massive difference, aren't they? Sene, we'll come to you and welcome this evening. Same question, a little bit on your background, which is quite extensive in Irish rugby.
Oh, thanks, Matt, and hi everyone who's on the call. And firstly, actually, I'll just jump in there. Lucy's very modest. I played with Lucy a number of years ago, and to come from a sport like GAA into a sport like Sevens and perform the way she did took an awful lot of work behind the scenes. She is a credit to any talent transfer girls out there watching this, that you can perform quite quickly on the world stage. So fair play to you, Lucy. My journey, I moved to Ireland about 10 years ago. I wasn't born in Ireland. I absolutely love the place, and I am so grateful to be here. I actually came through the National Talent ID Sevens program when I moved here. My first club was Galwegians. I lived in Galway, loved the club. I know there's some Galwegians out there on this call. My very first club, I saw an ad on Facebook about the Talent ID. I went to the first session, my very first trial for the Talent ID in Old Belvedere, which is my club now. And for that reason was that it was my first taste of that experience. And for me, I'm, certain teams and things, if they mean something to me, I'll make sure that I still contribute. So yeah, after a few years being involved in the program, I was really grateful to get a call up and then represent Ireland in 15s first and then Sevens in 2015. And then through that journey, I was, in between national program and training for club and, chipping away at learning all sorts of things to be a better player and ultimately a better person, really. But I suppose a little bit of context before that 10 years, I was born in New Zealand on the other side of the world. I started rugby at 13 years old in high school. I played with women because there weren't many girls really in the small town that I grew up in, which I love, which is Oamaru, if anyone else knows where that is. One of the key turning points for me, apart from watching my brother, who reminded me of Carlos Spencer back in the day. I'm not sure if you know him, Mab will know him. He actually inspired me to get involved in rugby. The way he brought the community together, weekly events, small town, did all the skills and all that stuff. So I wanted to be like him, my brother. And then I went to school, joined the club, and my very first coach, believe it or not, was the centre for the Black Ferns at the time. She was doing a teaching placement. And all of those little things made a huge difference. And, looking back now, reflect, and they are certainly some, some key moments in my career, and also what's kept me going, and then also what's made me want to contribute back to where I am now. So quick glance at that for this stage, but I'm at Old Belvedere now for club.
No, super, Sene. And if your brother could play anything like Carlos, he'd be a magician to watch on pitch. Claire, we'll come to you. Welcome as well, and thank you very much for coming along this evening. An insight into your background.
Yeah, nice to see you all there, guys, and really enjoy listening to the girls' stories as well. So my story is a little bit different, not dissimilar to Lucy's in that I played a lot of GAA, Camogie football growing up. I actually played rugby from the age of about, I'm not quite sure, I'd say it was 6 or 7. My older brother was playing, and I was very much dragged along too, and I was very lucky to be exposed to lots of different sports by my dad, and I played in Youghal Rugby Club with the boys, some of my good friends still, up till I was about 10 or 11. And then unfortunately at the time there wasn't a pathway there for girls to continue to play in those teenage years. And obviously luckily now a lot of you guys will have played twice, 10 times the rugby that we have played at this stage, which is phenomenal, the pathways that are in place now. But so I stopped playing at about 11. The guys were getting pretty big, and then I played Camogie football. And when I went to college at 18, I kind of I knew in the back of my head I wanted to get back into playing rugby again. It was something I really loved and enjoyed. So I started to play my club rugby in Bows in Limerick, and there was a lot of Irish internationals in Bows at the time, and so those they were the ones you looked up to. And I was luckily had an opportunity to play interpros, and I was young and ambitious and wanted to play for Ireland. And so not dissimilar to Ciara's story, I wasn't selected to play, or I wasn't selected any further than that after interpros. So I spent a lot of time. I just jumped on the national training bandwagon and did the gym sessions with the girls, did the conditioning sessions, did the skill sessions. I was the ultimate tag along for a good 2 years there, while the national girls were training, and they were improving my skill set, because I was training with players that ultimately were better than I was. So then from there, I was lucky enough to be selected in an Irish 15s training squad. Then I wasn't selected going forward, went back to the grind again. I was in the meantime selected in the sevens program. That very much took off, and we were trying to qualify, which we did for the Moscow World Cup in 2013. And then from there, I ended up a contracted sevens player from 2013 to 2019. So it was a phenomenal experience, with the best of people, and who were just the most quality players I could play around in the country. And it was a fantastic journey. And then in 2019, I was lucky enough to make a transition out of the sevens game into 15s, and I played a little bit across both squads. I trained with both squads for a little while, and ultimately transitioned into the 15s game where I am now. So Ciara is my captain in 15s, and I played under Lucy for many years in sevens. So I've just been very lucky to be exposed to both games, I suppose. That's kind of a whistle-stop tour of my journey, I suppose.
No, that's great, Claire. You mentioned you felt you were tagging along there. I think my perspective on that is you were doing a lot of hard work and putting in a lot of hours that has contributed to you getting where you are. So look, four amazing stories, but four very unique stories. And straight away, I hope it's really clear for everyone listening in that there is no one path to your dream in green, if we use that cliche there. But it's understanding that if you're willing to work hard and persevere, you will achieve what you wish to achieve. There is, though, an acknowledgement that we need to make that there are bumps along the way, or bends in the road, as Ciara so eloquently put it. And I'm going to ask you, Ciara, I'll come back to you on that point. Some of those challenges that you faced, what's been the toughest transition point for you in your rugby career in getting to your position now as captain of Ireland? And, what did you do to overcome it?
That's a really good question. And I think I was actually thinking about this, and I can actually pinpoint a year. It was in 2011, so long time ago, in that I had made the Munster under 18s age grade squad, and I was thrilled. Got to play up in Athlone and got to play in Thurles and got to represent Munster, which was class. And the following year, Munster trials for the senior team came up, and I was like, look, I'm going to go for it and try it, because I was still able to play under 18s as well. So I was like, look, I'll try it. And I actually made the senior squad, and I kind of went to the start for experience just to see, look, what can I do? And I remember getting the email and saying, look, you made the squad, and I was like, oh my God, okay. So then that was actually, it was an amazing point for me, but also quite a scary point in that I jumped from my comfort zone of under 18s, where you knew my players, you felt comfortable, to go into a senior squad. And I remember Keo, you were on that squad at the time as well, and yeah. And I just remember that was a big learning curve for me, in that I went from playing underage rugby to senior rugby. And the big thing for me was learning, so was how to play the game and how to play it smart. And I remember that campaign that we were training in Limerick, and I remember I was training alongside these amazing back rows, and Siobhan Fleming, Joy Neville, Laura Guest, and I was just starstruck. And I literally was like a sponge at every training. I wouldn't say a word, but I just took it all in. And I think that for me it was outside my comfort zone, in that I was going into this unknown and trying to, I suppose, put my mark down but still being respectful and taking in all the information. That took a while for me, and I think it took nearly 6 weeks before I said my first word of training. Because I was like, I'm going to just hand back here, listen, take it all in, and just learn the ropes. And I really remember that was one of my most enjoyable but toughest experiences in rugby, going from the Munster 18 jersey to the senior jersey. But I learned so much that has stood to me going on, and I never forget that before when my first match, and it would have been my first cap with Munster, I was eating breakfast, pure nervous, and Joy Neville sat across the way from me, and I was like, oh my God, like Joy Neville is eating breakfast with me. And she was literally just chatting. And I think that really put me at ease, and she literally said, never be afraid to ask a question. And that is something I've taken with me throughout. You can even ask now, I'll always ask questions. I've gone from a girl who would never ask a question to actually, okay, I'm not sure, ask it. So that was one of my toughest transitions, but one of my most beneficial as well.
Excellent. Ciara, so you mentioned there one of your key messages that got you through that was ask a question. If you were to give advice to a player now who's making that transition, and it's still fairly common in the female game to jump straight from that 18s to senior, would you relay that advice, or what else would you give to help a player make that jump in the current day?
Completely. I would say, look, if you have any questions, there's more experienced players who are there to answer them. And you mightn't have all the answers, they'll always try and find the answer for you. But also to back yourself. I think that's a really important thing at under-8 when you're coming up as a younger player, that you're there for a reason. So back yourself and show what you can do. And don't go into your shell. Be the expressive rugby player that you can be, that you had at the under 18 bracket, and bring it with you to the senior game, and you'll absolutely love it. You'll relish it.
Yeah, excellent. Claire, I'm actually going to come to you. Your experience across both sides of the game, and in sevens, you would have seen a lot of young people or the under 18s making that jump straight into the national seven squads, for example. Advice again along similar lines to help players make that jump?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as Ciara alluded to, it can be quite a tough transition, because often, you go from being the very best player in an underage club to, being a very new player in a new environment, and a jump to adult grade rugby, be it at club level or obviously international or interprovincial level, is huge. I very much, it is easy for that experience to overwhelm you. But I think if you kind of pull it back in and focus on one or two small things to work on and improve on from session to session, I think that goes a very long way. Because if you're not going to improve every single skill set, or you're not going to understand maybe from a 15s perspective, it could be set piece or line out or general play. And from a sevens perspective, again, you're not going to learn the game in one or two training sessions, and it can become very overwhelming very quickly. But if you pull it back and you concentrate on one or two things approaching each session, you just start to build and build and build, and you get that momentum. And then, as Ciara said, you back yourself, because ultimately, you're there to compete, and you're there to put your hand up for a jersey and to push us guys, who it's not our jersey forever, so we want the competition, and we want to improve too. So ultimately, you just improve week to week, session to session, and it just starts to build, and your momentum builds, and your confidence builds, and I think just taking it step by step like that would probably be my advice there.
No, excellent. I think continual improvement is a must-have for anyone who wants to be successful at the top level. I would 100% agree. Lucy, you transitioned into sevens. Was that the biggest jump you've had to make, or is there a part in your rugby career that has been a big challenge for you, and can you share that with us?
Yeah, so changing over sports was massive for me, but when I look back on it, I've definitely had bigger, I think maybe tougher transitions. At that time, it was something completely new. So although I was out of my comfort zone, expectations maybe weren't as high, because no one knew what I was capable within rugby, and I didn't know myself what I was going to be capable of. So it was very simple to get my head down, work really hard, and then just try have good people around me to develop skill. But then it was kind of a point where we as a team had worked really hard to get back on the World Series. We had been been relegated the year before, and we worked hard to get back on the World Series. And I think after that first year up in the World Series, we performed quite poorly and we struggled to find our feet on it. And that was the moment where you turn around and you have to look at yourself and think, I've got myself to this level, but now are you going to actually try step that up, and are you going to try become a player that can now hold yourself on the World Series? And also not just to have to, when I first came in, it was very simple to worry about me and worry about my passing and developing my skill. But then it was that learning of, right now, how do I get my team to that level? How do we work together to get ourselves to that level? And what can I do to try and help those around me to improve while I'm still really working on trying to improve myself as well? So I think that was probably a big learning curve for me, and a point where I kind of realized no matter how hard you work, when you're at this level, you'll never reach the top. And the more you start to win, the more you want to improve even more and more. So as soon as you try and improve one skill, something else crops up. So it was kind of that learning that that's what makes sports so great, and that kind of accepting and wanting to constantly always want to be improving, and realizing that although you kind of surge for perfection, it's never going to come, because you're just always going to want to try and improve yourself even more and more.
No, excellent. It leads me on to another question, and Sene, I'll throw to you for this one. Obviously, making it to national representation is an amazing achievement, but as Lucy's alluded to there a little bit, actually staying there can be just as big a challenge, I imagine, if not an even bigger one. So, you know, from your perspective, playing both 15s and 7s, what does it take from a player to maintain and keep selection within national teams?
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, the girls touched on it before. Like, look, we're only caretakers of this jersey, and any week in, week out, we've got to work just as hard as anyone to get an opportunity, really, to be involved in the squad again, let alone, you know, be in a position to wear the jersey on the pitch on behalf of Ireland. So with that attitude in mind, I suppose maybe five things spring to mind for me. And one of them is, first and foremost, you've got to know why you're there and why you want it. So if you have your why, that'll be your motivation for when it's pissing down outside, it's freezing and you don't want to go to training. You know, your mates are out drinking, have a good night, then you've got to go and do your MAS run to get your GPS mileage up. So you got to know your why. After that, maybe put in your support network, have an awareness around who is it that you communicate to. Is it your family, is it your parents, or who is it that you live with? You might live in a uni flat or college dwelling, whoever it is. Communicate it to them, because you need that support network around you. That's your environment to help you thrive. And then they'll be easier to understand that maybe at night you might need them to be quieted a little bit later, you know, those sorts of things. They all matter. Other things like, for me, a big one, and these girls are top quality examples of this. You got to be a good teammate in person, first and foremost with your club. Because if you are, that means you're good at building your relationships. And then you can express yourself off the pitch and then on the pitch. And then you'll be able to express your talents to those that you want to see you express it, so you can wear the jersey, a provincial jersey or a national jersey. And with that in mind, I suppose at the same time, biggest one for me is to be coachable. You absolutely 100% have to be coachable. I've played the game for maybe since I was 13. I won't tell you my age. Couple of decades though, probably. Over a couple of decades. I'm learning things every single day. And it's up to you around that attitude. So I'm sure all of you girls out there, you're on this call because you have an amazing attitude, because you want to learn the how-tos. And this is one of the how-tos. It's that an attitude of convenience doesn't get you much, but an attitude of whatever it takes will make you unstoppable. So you got to be coachable. You got to humble yourself when you need to and learn some things. I'll give you a quick example. A few years ago, I was dropping the ball all the time. I was thinking, what the frick is going on with me? Griggsy came in, first year of his coaching. Adam Griggs, national coach, first year of his coaching. Had a trial game against Scotland. And I dropped the ball. I caught the next one, it was grand. And I was like, oh. And he said one thing to me. He said, Sens, put your hands up. Put your hands up like this. Like before, the smallest thing. I know it sounds silly out there. I know you'll think, oh, what an idiot. And I actually was an idiot. So I started putting my hands up. I caught bloody almost every ball. The year after, I loved it. Last year, Kieran Hallett comes in, defensive coach. It was the game for England. It was this year actually, Six Nations. Standing there and I was thinking, in my head to myself, thinking, that's what Kieran means. That's what he means. And Kieran walks over and I said, Kieran, that's what you meant. Eye on the ball, to rush up on the D. The most simplest thing. I know it sounds crazy, but that certainly helped my defence. One of the best defensive kind of, just for myself, from a confidence point of view, how it can help my teammates beside me. That little thing actually just helped me. And that was only like months ago. So be coachable, because you never know where you can learn. And the last thing is to make sure you enjoy it. I have mentioned this many times. We're on that journey. December's a big month for all of us, and you guys included on this call. Massive, massive month. This year, hands down, has been one of my funnest years. Most enjoyable. Ciara Griffin comes in, drops the mic on our first meeting, team meeting. She drops the mic, sets the tone, game over. We're ready for this. Man, it's been one of my funnest years so far. And it's programs like this that'll keep us accountable. So we perform at camp this weekend, but we've got to get our Jeep stats up. So I'll be running during the week before camp, and then week on, week out after that. But yeah, you got to enjoy it as well. So those 5 points, if you heard me, maybe they're just for me. The girls might have different things, but that's what I'd love to share with you.
No, that's great, Sene. Thanks, and great clarity there, and great things for the viewers to be able to take away. You referenced in your conversation there, Sene, Ciara and her leadership and setting the tone, as you put it. So I'm now going to just spend some time speaking to Ciara firstly as captain of the 15s, and then as Lucy as captain of the 7s. I'm going to ask you both to dive a little bit deeper into the qualities that you expect, I suppose, or you believe that is needed from players to represent Ireland. And I'm going to ask you to look at it both on and off the field for me, if you can. Maybe focusing more off the field to start with. What does it require off field to be part of these national teams? Ciara, I'll start with you.
Great question. How long do we have to no, I think big thing you need is a good work ethic. You need to be able to work and I suppose have discipline as well. That we all have full-time jobs. We all are full-time education, and that you have to do your training around that. And often people can say, "Oh, look, I made it work." In order to maybe I can't train. Whereas you have a schedule, you follow it. You have to be disciplined in that, and you have to have that ethic. That look, I'll get up a bit earlier before school and get this done, or things like that. And that's a massive part of a successful team, because it's putting in those building blocks that isn't on the pitch. It's the unseen work. There's a quote I live by. I have it up in my gym, and it's so everyone knows Matthew Fraser, fittest man on the planet, and he has this quote, and I love it. It's like, I did yesterday what you didn't, so I can do today what you can't. So basically, it's doing the unseen work. That you have to be disciplined to do that. That's a massive thing I think of for making a national squad, is having that drive, that work ethic, but also you have to lead by example. And that's both on the pitch and off the pitch. So that's off the pitch, doing your mobility, any niggles, keeping on top of your niggles. Like one of my friends said to me before last day that, "Oh, my ankle is fine. It's fine. It's not niggling anymore." And I was like, "Once a niggle, always a niggle." So you have to keep on top of things. And I think sometimes we can get complacent in that, "Oh, I actually feel fine. I don't need to do that mobility." Whereas, it's just getting that into that mindset that you get into this routine, and you're like, "Look, it's not running. I'm not running, or I'm not tackling, or I'm not lifting weights." And that used to be my mindset for years. And you're like, actually, no, it's such an important element of performance. And also, I think for me is being eager to learn. There's one player, she's going to kill me now, but she just stands out to me for this, and I think Lucy, you'll understand this too. Sending Dorothy Wall. She's just so eager to learn, and that she's the epitome of never afraid to ask a question, and always wanted to get the answer. And I think when you want to make a national squad or a provincial squad, it's being eager to learn, to absorb all that information, and like Sene said, knowing your why, but also knowing the why of a play, the why of a process, why you're doing something. And I think once you get all that into your mindset, into your thinking, it becomes so much easier, like so much more fluid. And there are a few ones for me, but also you have to be hungry. You have to be hungry to perform. You don't just come to show up and rock up and say, "Oh, I get up my GPS data here." No, you want to get the mini wins. So, take every hit as a match hit, every tackle as a match, every carry is a match carry. So, I think it's having that you train to perform, but also you come onto a training pitch that you're training like you want to play, and that's a big thing we've driven this year, like Sene touched on about with the lads, driving that work ethic in the squad. But they're just some of the things for me. But there's so much more. But there's a few points.
No, Ciara, that's excellent. And as we hit the halfway mark of our conversation, the time is flying. It's so enthralling. Just a reminder, if anyone out there's got some questions that they want to set through, we will do our best to feed those through to the 4 players tonight. Claire, I'm actually going to come back to you because Ciara's first point there was this idea of work ethic and being able to manage schedules and do everything you can to make yourself the best rugby player possible. Now, in my own understandings across both the teams, there's probably no one who's had to be juggling schedules like you have through your career to date with 7s and 15s. So being part of multiple national programs, studying physio, graduating from that, studying medicine, graduating from that, now working in emergency medicine. Any one of those things is a lot for anybody to handle. It can be a challenge for aspiring players to juggle rugby, life, work, study, and all those things. First of all, wow, that's amazing that you managed to do it. But can you shed some light on it for us? What enabled you to do that? And can you share some tips maybe?
Yeah, I think that was a very nice introduction there, Matt. You did do nice. Yeah, look, I suppose, I've had a bit of a think about this during the week about, what are the key things you need to manage yourself. I think there's kind of 2 main things if you might want to take from this conversation that I try to work on. Planning is key, first and foremost. Having the ability, to plan long term, and I'm talking kind of over months and maybe 12 months, and looking at where potential pitfalls may arise with your full-time job or your college schedule, things like that. But I think almost more importantly is making sure that your week-to-week planning, that you're on top of it, and this is a real work on for me, and the girls will vouch for that. We don't always get it perfectly, but what I try to do week to week, I call it like the Sunday night plan. You make your cup of tea on a Sunday night, and some people write it down in a notebook, or you can in your head, whichever it is. But for me, on a Sunday evening, I try to think, okay, what does the week ahead look like? And often our schedule is quite tight, and there's only so many hours in the week, and you have to factor in your gym, your conditioning, your mobility, your rehab from your physio, all those bits and pieces, a little bit of analysis on huddle, whatever you have to achieve. But if you sit down on a Sunday night and you say, okay, this is what my week looks like, and some weeks will look very different to others, but in my eyes, then you run the week, you don't let the week run you, and you can get a handle on it, and you're in control then of the week and the week's training. And ultimately, the following Sunday night, you want to be able to sit down and say, you know what, I'm in a better place now this week after the week's work I've put behind me. So planning is key, and I think short-term planning particularly helps me. The big plan has, you have to communicate early with regards to the bigger schedule, be it college or work, and planning around games and things like that. I think often we're quite good at that and making sure we box that off and get your whatever it is, from annual leave to college lectures, things like that. But I think short-term planning week to week, if it's something that you're not used to doing, try it. It might work for you, and try to ruin your own week. And I think that really helps for me. The second piece of advice I'd have is around prioritizing. So you have to have the ability to recognize that there are times in your life, or your college life, or your working life, or whatever it may be, where recovery might be the priority. You might not be feeling particularly well, and I'm looking at the girls now. We're all pretty poor at doing this. We want to train and continue to train, but there may be a time where you have to recover, or there may be a time where your personal life is a priority, or there may be a time where your professional life or your academic life is the priority, and that's okay too. You have to acknowledge that. But as Ciara said, it's not an excuse for not getting through your week schedule or your session. So, no matter how busy you are from a work life perspective, I think you can't use it as an excuse. You have to still prioritize when on the weeks that you need to, and adjust your week accordingly, and communicate. Communicate is the big one then. That you're, always staying in touch with your coach, your national coach, your club coach, your intervention coach, because they're all reasonable people. If you sit down and have a conversation, it's not lost on the national coaches that, we all get up in the morning and go do a job or have college or things like that. You can't use that as an excuse to not prioritize your week accordingly. You can't be too hard on yourself. Every week is different, and you may not have the perfect week. We're all a work in progress, but if you try to plan and you try to prioritize those two as best you can, you'll do well from it. It may not work for you, but they're my two: planning and prioritizing. If you can try to work on those, that'd be my advice on it. I'm sure the girls have plenty of advice there. They're pretty organized, these three.
Claire, I think that's great. You motivated me to make better use of my Sunday evenings, if nothing else. So
have a cup of tea as well.
Do it with a cup of tea; it will make it even better. Lucy, captain of the Sevens squad. The same question I did ask Ciara there a little bit earlier. The expectations for players coming into the Sevens program from your perspective, on and off field. Can you shed some light on what they are for players on the call who mightn't be aware of what's needed?
I think it's obviously very daunting when you first join a professional program, or when you're on a national team. But I think all that you have to remember, and all that is expected of you, is that you try be your best. And from the girls that I've met before, that doesn't stop on the field. It's a lifestyle, and it's the way that they carry themselves on weekends, outside of training. It's the effort they put into the very small things, so that when you're on the pitch, you back that you have all those done, and you're not thinking, oh, I wish I'd went to bed that bit earlier last night, or I wish I sorted out my diet before now. Like, they're all just givens. And then after that, then when you're on the rugby field, you can just trust yourself to give your best. I think a big thing as well is to immerse yourself in the team and become part of the whole environment. Like, see what the standards are and set those standards for yourself, both on and off the field. And after that, why ask your teammate to do something you wouldn't do? So set the standard yourself and live by those and buy into the team. I think it's so important to have not just the respect of your teammates, but to also have the trust of your teammates, and that's built on the field and off the field. And I've met some of the best people I've ever met through rugby, and it's because of the fact that not only will they have my back if I miss a tackle on the field, but I also trust them so much because they'll do anything for you off the field. So I think if you immerse yourself in the team, become part of the reason of other people's whys, really buy into their whys, buy into what it is a team you want to do. And if you come in to a team, even if it's a national team, with that attitude of, I want to add something to this team, I want to become a part of it, and whatever the goal is for this team, I'm going to help drive this team towards that goal. I think if you come in with that attitude, no matter what, you're going to do whatever it takes to get there, and you're going to be such a value to that team. You can't place enough value on someone who's going to put the team first and who's going to help the team to get towards their goals. So I think for me, that's what set apart so many of the girls that have came into the program and have excelled so much in it as well.
No, excellent. That's really interesting insight there, Lucy. Thank you very much. To build on that a little bit, is there particular on-field aspects that you think that players need to be aware of? So the girls who are coming into that Sevens program for a start, and I'll stay with you, Lucy, what's the biggest adjustment for them on pitch as well?
I think a massive thing, probably across 15s, I don't have as much exposure to 15s, but in rugby in general, it's so much of the game is based off trust and off knowing what others around are doing. So it's amazing how much talk is such a valuable skill in the sport of rugby. And I think that's a massive shock to the system. When I first joined the program, or when under 18s girls come up into the program, they have such talent and such skill. There's a reason why they're there, but it's the realization of, oh, there's not much point in me doing this if I actually am letting those around me know what I'm doing and becoming part of that line. So I think talk for me is one of the biggest things on the field, because that's how you develop trust. And then outside of that is just that kind of understanding of you're working as hard as you possibly can at every stage, because your job is never done, and that also will help develop the trust of the players beside you and then as well.
Excellent. Sene, I'll come to you along a similar lines to start off with. The on-field aspects of playing international rugby. You know, some of the biggest challenges for players that make that jump. What's the biggest shift they need to be aware of, do you think?
Super question. I've loved listening to the girls. I'm learning a few things myself from these legends here. I think the biggest thing is actually game management. The girls have said all of the other kind of qualities and values, which is really important, really, really important. Probably just understanding the game a little bit more, and then it kind of helps motivate you to put in the work around the core skills that you need across whatever position you play or whatever you're involved with within your 7s or 15s team. Gives you a bit more clarity on why you're doing certain things. You tend to put a bit more effort and energy into that when you know a bit more.
No, definitely. And I'm going to throw a difficult question out here to put a few people on the spot. Game management and communication, I think, are two outstanding qualities for all rugby players to have. Some advice on how an individual person can develop themselves in those aspects. I'll stay with you, Sene, for a start.
That's a great question. They can come to you, can't they, Matt? Just kidding. That's a super question. You know, really, really quickly, I think what's worked really well, and I'll go by maybe something that's been practical over the last couple of years. It's got results from girls involved in provincial team. I was very fortunate to have the responsibility to captain Leinster. This was a couple of years ago. Ben Armstrong was our coach, and we had a super management. Because of my self-awareness, I know that I can't do everything. And I knew that the most value I can bring to the team is for me to just do my job. But for me to be able to do my job, I needed to make sure my girls around me understand how they can do their job too. Because for me, and all of us here, it's all about us being the best that we can be, and then helping our teammates be the best they can be. So as a collective, we go for it, man, we be the best in the world. That is it, hands down. So for me, I'm really thankful to have I do a lot of kind of work off the pitch in terms of my personal development, professional development. And because of that, because I'm fortunate to have relationships around the world from those who are at the top of their game, you know, I bounce things off. How can I do certain things? And then one of the best practical tools I was able to implement was around with what we do with the leadership group. Even the process of how you select a leadership group, the process of how, you know, you build the relationship with your coaches for them to understand what you want to do and how you can bring your players together to help drive and have a balance within their leadership group where you have your young ones coming through, amazing energy, amazing talent. You have the peer group, engineering role, the most important. Then you have the leadership group, typically the older people, just kidding. It's a balance. Representative of the different demographics. And so what that meant is that we break it down. So what we did, and I'm happy to share this because it's worked really well. Players took to it well. Well, to my face, they said I took to it well. What we did is we broke it down. We had a tactical group. So mainly your strategy and tactical, so your 9s and 10s around the game management. We had a line out leaders, a couple of leaders with a contingency. Every one of them, we had a contingency in. So if a player wasn't selected, straight away we have someone available. We had social and entertainment, a very important committee. That's a very important one for culture. What else did we have? A couple of other ones. Jeepers, can't even remember. Oh, if I find out, I'll filled in there, but there were about 5. So we had altogether kind of like roughly 10. Sounds like a lot, but it was needed. A really quick example of how you can develop your game management. We had some new second rowers come in. Typically, we're a back rower. Hannah O'Connor's her name. She plays for Blackrock. She's involved in the national squad. Super person before the player. Super person. She came on board and I asked her, I said, hey, are you happy to be our line leader? Spoke to the coaches. Yeah, man, she's the one. Because our other second rower, fantastic. She was playing in Australia as well at the time. So Hannah steps up. And what that took was literally hours on the phone throughout the week, in between trainings. Scenes, what do you think of this? I was like, yep, that's good. You know, what are we doing in the red zone, green zone, orange zone, orange D, orange A? What are you thinking here? What are you thinking to call? This and that. That takes time, but it takes dedication, discipline, passion, because she knows she wanted the green jersey. She wanted it. And that to me showed that she wanted it first for Leinster. And all of us contributed to being on the same page. So we had strong, leaders throughout the different areas of our leadership group, where our 9s and 10s, we had Larry and our 10s, where we had Elsa, we had a number of the girls all over it. If the ball comes out, orange zone, straight away, we tested ourselves. Within three seconds, what's the call? So all of that stuff, we did all that work, and no one sees it. They see us win the championship back to back. But that took hours of that stuff, hours of understanding why we do certain things, why we do certain line-out calls, why are we going for a 5-man and not a 4-man in this area? Why is it that we're going to go for a scrum in this area? Why is it that we're going to go for this particular move? Why is it that, defensive systems, we've got an outstanding, we play Munster, we play juniors team, unbelievable. They had threats all over the park. We changed our defensive system to go man on and put pressure on them so they don't get the ball out to bloody Emma Considine on the wing, Laura Sheehan, those girls. So it takes game understanding to be able to change a tactic, but it takes right from the start a self-awareness of where you are in your team, and then see if you can create some sort of system that allows you to have clarity around the different roles. Ciara touched on it perfectly. You come into your team and you're new, and so your head's down and you're working hard and you're earning the spot, which is fine. And then it builds on onto that. The other side to that is that quite quickly you can probably accelerate that. So how can you accelerate that? That's relationships and building that environment to get it quicker. So that's just maybe one example.
No, that's excellent, Sene. And Claire, coming to you, in a player that plays a position where communication and game management is critical to the success of the team, what do you do to continually improve yourself in relation to those two skills?
Yeah, I think certainly as a 9 or 10, it has to be your kind of bread and butter to be constantly kind of reflecting on, as Sene alluded to there, knowing your playbook inside out, and knowing your opposition and preparing appropriately. Why are we doing this here, and what are we trying to target there? I think if you have access to it, certainly footage is a fantastic resource. But if you don't, I think often having that ability to self-reflect and getting feedback from people who you trust and value, everybody will give you feedback. If you ask anybody, they'll give you feedback. And as you progress and you play at a higher level, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but it's who you value and who you go to for that feedback, I think, is really important. And that could be your coaching staff usually, but also it may be from a brother, a sister, a dad, another club player who plays in your position. It's something, or even the person who you're battling for that position with. And that comes down to the culture and environment that you play in. So Ellen Murphy and myself and Larry as well would often sit down and chat and say, look, what are we trying to achieve here? Or what do you think of that? Or, and I think that's the type of environment you need to create. But also, we compete with each other day in, day out, but ultimately we're striving towards the same thing. And with regard to your game management, certainly being able to self-reflect is really, really important. And I suppose Sene, very much hit the nail on the head with regards to being coachable. You must be coachable, because otherwise you won't improve, and you need to improve, and we all need to improve in order for us to progress and get better and better. So I think from a game management perspective, my strategy would be to go to those people that you trust for that feedback and say, I wasn't too happy with this, or I thought that was a good decision. What do you think? And sometimes, you just need that little bit of feedback or a different perspective on things. And I think that would probably be my advice on it, to find the people you trust to go to for the feedback, and don't go for feedback for the sake of it. Everybody throws the word feedback out there. You must be willing to take it on board. You must be willing to adapt accordingly. And I think it's that'd probably be my advice on it. Yeah, I'm sure Lucy and Junior would have plenty to say on it too.
Claire, that's excellent. And the point coachable has come up a lot. And just for the viewers, to make them aware, our session next week will actually give that coach's perspective as well. So we'll have coaches from the national team sharing their perspective and insights on this same thing. We've had some excellent questions come through, so I'm just going to spend the last 10 minutes of our conversation addressing some of these. So we'll jump around here. And Ciara, I'm going to come back to you. A lot of interest sparked on exactly what a weekly program does look like for you at the top level. Could you briefly give us a snapshot of what a week might look like, including what you're doing outside of what the actual national program is?
Very good. Yeah. So our programs kind of differ week to week depending on, say, our load, our matches, our training camps. So I can give you this week. This week we're going to have 2 strength sessions. So they're going to be total body strength. We have a skill session on a Tuesday where we just go over basic skills like catch, pass, evasion, footwork, body presentation. Then there's club training on a Wednesday. Usually before that or after you do a speed session to get up those high speed meters. So as me for a back row, it takes a lot to get that high speed meters up. So I focus a lot on them. And then you might have a running session as well to do. But the weekend leading into, say, we've camped this weekend, so we've Saturday and Sunday. So it would be, the load would be tapered a bit in terms of leg volume wise. But let's say on a weekend where you mightn't be training, you could be doing, maybe you'd be doing 3 gym sessions, you'd be doing your skills, your club training as well, and your speed, but also you'd be doing like maybe a running session. So that could be a mixed distance running session, or it might be an MAS running session, something like that. So basically it just changes week to week. I love to say, here you go, this is the map of this is what you do, this is what you get out of it. But it changes, and Orla Kern is our SNC, and she is brilliant. And she'll tailor all the programs to you. So like, let's see, even if you say, look, I'm a bit of a niggle here, or look, my legs are a bit tired, or she'll help you, or I think I can go heavier here, what do you think? And it's great having that feedback and that communication with your SNC. So if there's any girls out there who are on programs and have strength and conditioning coaches in their teams, talk to them, and don't be afraid to ask, because, oh no, I can't do that because it means, oh, maybe I'm not doing it right. Get the right information, and even if you want to do a few extras, like me, I used to do too much before. When I was younger, I wanted to get faster, and me being old school, and so it's from Kerry that Moss Kane used to run up Curra Hill with a 50 kg bag of ration on his shoulder. I used to do 50. I used to do 25 kg bag of ration running up my hill at the farm, or I'd be pushing a round feeder instead of a sled. Now, obviously, looking back, it got me somewhere, but it's just being smart and using your SNC, because they're there to help you.
Excellent. And once again, for the viewers, we'll have the SNC coaches, I think, on week 3 to share some programs and insights as well. Lucy, a question for you that's come through directly here is a couple of players on the call interested in trying out 7s, but would be interested to know, the specialised the skills required in 7s as opposed to 15s.
So I guess for sevens, being that there's only 7 players on the field, it's so valuable if you have good evasion skills, good footwork and good speed. If you're able to beat the first defender anytime, then there's a high likelihood that you're going to score a try or get in behind the defensive line. So I guess just practicing good evasion skills, but then also the fact that with sevens, you can find yourself in any position on the field. So you could be a scrum half, could be first receiver, you could be ruck, and you can't really be specialised in one area. You have to have a good skill base across the board, so you have to be able to pass it, a good pass over 10 meters, have to be able to be ruck, have to be able to do clearing passes, because anyone can be a 9 across the field. So I guess just making sure that you can cover those bases, but then also having something that makes you stand apart, whether it be that you're a very good tackler, because that's very beneficial in defence, or whether it be that you've got really good evasion and really good footwork or speed. They're kind of our main ones, but I guess you have to be able to transfer across all skills, so being able to catch pass at any position and being able to ruck as well.
No, excellent. Claire, I'm coming back to you. The insight into your managing of your schedule has given us a few questions, and someone asked about the importance of being able to switch off as well. How important is that from your point of view, and what do you do to switch off and take a break from rugby?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's something that you have to work on in a way. I think busy people get things done. But yeah, you're 100%. It's important to switch off. But I think for me, I suppose having more than one outlet is really important. So I'm very lucky that I have a job that I go to every day now that I absolutely love. And when you're at work, you can't play rugby, and when you're on a rugby pitch, and you drop a ball, you can't be thinking about work, So to find what you enjoy outside of rugby is really, really important, because, you can only play rugby for so many hours a day, and you can only play rugby for a certain period of time, albeit Sene is defying the odds here, but she's going to play forever, that girl. But I suppose you have to find what you enjoy outside of rugby, and that could be anything from spending time with your friends, spending time with your other half, whatever it is, it's really important to prioritize that, because I think often your personal life, people say that, and we can all agree to this, that, we choose to play rugby for Ireland. It's not a sacrifice, it's a choice. And, you have to recognise that it's an amazing privilege to do that. But you have to remember that all the people in your personal life and your friends, they're on that journey with you too. And they're the guys that put in the sacrifice, and to make you the better player, to make you the person that you are. So all this having the time and not, it's an easy thing to do, but making sure you make the time for them and that you do switch off, and whatever it is, whether it's you're going for a walk, whether you're walking the dog, you can't play rugby all the time. So having that outlet and having those people and good people around you to drag you away from rugby when maybe it's not going well, or the girls will definitely be able to relate here. When you're injured, it's a really, really difficult time, and it's a very frustrating time, and often it's the people that are closest to you that get you through that. So I think find what you enjoy outside of rugby and pursue that too, because ultimately that will make you a better person, and then after that a better player. So that would be my advice: find what you like.
No, absolutely. Claire, Lucy, Ciara, Sene, that hour has absolutely flown by. I feel really privileged to have had the opportunity to ask those few questions, and in all honesty, just sit back and to take it all in. I was trying to take notes along the way. After 2 pages, I honestly gave up because there was so much richness in what you've all said. The different stories, the different journeys, the examples of perseverance that has gone through to enabling you to get where you are, the practical tips with the Sunday night planning with the cup of tea, through to the importance of being coachable, the importance around work ethic, Sene's 5 points, with the important one being understanding your why, contributing to others, some of the expectations, Lucy and Ciara, that you outlined of players when they come into those national squads. So many valuable things to be able to take away. And to everybody on the call, I hope you're able to take away as much of this high quality interaction and information that we were privileged to be exposed to today. To all of you, we really do appreciate you giving up your time in the middle of busy schedules. We're coming into an incredibly important period for the women's 15s as well, and we'll take the opportunity to wish you all the luck through the back end of the Six Nations and through the World Cup qualifiers as well, and the girls in the Sevens program continuing to work hard with games in the not too distant future. So on behalf of everybody who was on the call, I'd like to thank you very much.